So they said. You know, but that's manufacturers for you. They could probably only produce 800.
OK, can you show us this press then?
Right, this is a treadle press. This has got a couple of bells and whistles and probably dates from about 1874. So this is what a jobbing printer would have used to print broadsheet ballads on. They could be printed singly or they could be printed two up. And since most of the ones you've been looking at have been printed two to the sheet, it makes me suspect that this is the kind of press that they were printed on rather than a hand press.
OK, so it has a big pedal on the floor.
Right, the pedal is a treadle.
OK.
And there is a flywheel to your left hand.
Huge wheel.
So if you put your hand on the flywheel
Right.
and put your right foot on that treadle,
OK.
push the flywheel away from you and let the treadle come up. Just relax your knee. No, keep pushing.
Keep
pushing. Keep pushing. Now push down with your foot when it's got to the top. And keep pushing and keep your foot going at the same time.
OK.
And when you've got that rhythm going and you feel that it's your foot that's actually running the press, then you can stop pushing the flywheel.
OK.
And instead pick up a piece of paper.
OK.
And you pick that piece of paper up, and when the press is open, you put it in there to the piece of wood that's at the bottom and the piece of wood that's at the side. Now, while all that's happening, that noise that you can hear is the ink rollers putting ink onto the type and the image at the same time. To your left hand, there's a lever with a spring on it.
I see it.
Push it down from the top, and push it forward. Good. Now, carry on treadling. Now it's printed. Now push it down again and pull it back. Quickly, that's it. And you've actually printed an impression, which you now need to take out.
OK.
And replace. No, you don't stop.
Is he going to
The
bite
whole point
me?
of this is that you've got to be able to do 800 in an hour.
I think I'm quite slow.
You've done one.
So can I have a job? I don't think this music thing's working out for me. That's amazing.
And that's the first verse of Manchester's an Altered Town.
See, I was just getting nervous that it was going to bite my hand off.
It didn't happen a lot. There was a treadle press like this that was called the Alligator. And there was another one called a Cropper, which...
That sounds painful.
It does, doesn't it? I've, so far, never had an accident with one of these presses.
Knock on wood. Oh, it's metal everywhere.
Yeah.
Jennifer Reid, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I am the self-styled pre-eminent broadside balladress of the Manchester region.
That's marvellous. Are you perhaps the only balladress of the Manchester region?
Well, I invented the term balladress, so probably, yeah.
Well, how did you come about discovering the Manchester ballads?
I was living in Barcelona 3 years ago, and I ran out of money. And then I emailed loads of places in Manchester to see if they had any volunteer places open, and Cheatham's got back to me and said, since you like Lancashire folk music, we've got all these ballads in storage, come and have a look at them. And I did, and that was the end of that.
So what work did you do on the ballads in Cheatham's library? What did you do with them?
I just went through them all, digitised most of them.
And anybody can access those now?
They're all on their computers at Cheatham's, and I think you can request, to see them. I don't know what they've done with them since.
So you were invited to the Venice Biennale with the artist Jeremy Deller. How did that come about? How did you meet him?
Jeremy came to Cheatham's because he wanted a few ballads in his All That Is Solid Melts Into Air exhibition. So me and Kathy bookmarked about 200 for him, got them all out, like really excited, like they covered the whole of the reading room downstairs where Kathy sits, covered all the tables, like 6 tables, and he chose like 4 ballads, which is great,
How long did it take him to choose all of that?
Like a whole day, a whole afternoon, and I was just like, no, this one, and he was like, ah!
My name's Jeremy Deller, I'm a visual artist. I was making an exhibition about the Industrial Revolution, opened 3 years ago in Manchester. I was hoping to find some sort of folk music in the widest possible sense that was related to cities and to urbanism and industry. And I don't know whether these ballads are folk music as such, but they seem to me a very interesting point where a folk style was being altered to adapt to these new people who are living in cities, this new race of people, which was the industrialised urban dweller. and they wanted their music and they wanted their lives reflected back to them in the way that folk music would if you'd worked on a farm. But these are people who worked in factories. So for me, it was a very interesting moment in musical history.
People imagine that folk music is all about shepherds and things like that, but at the end of the day, folk music is about the things that happen to you when they happen to you. And in my experience in looking at these ballads, it's very much the response of a community to something quite shocking and quite new that's happening.
Yeah, it's about the trauma. I would call it the trauma of moving to a city, then living in a house with 20 people, and then having to get up at 5 to run to the factory, to work all hours. Can you imagine walking from a farm 20 miles outside Manchester into Manchester to find a job? You'd be absolutely terrified of what you were seeing when you saw that on the horizon you'd have the chimneys and the smoke, this black sort of mass on the horizon. And then you'd walk into the city and you'd just see all these people. You'd never seen so many people in your life before, and doing all these things going on around you, things being sold and bought, strange buildings, strange people doing things, people from all over the world. It must have been a shock to so many people, and we take that for granted now, but it would have been just this incredible change in your life, and a lot of the songs reflect that.
Now they tell us this world's ne'er at an end, but to prove to its country is what I intend. In a song that I've wrote, if you live you will see, in 1973.
He chose some really, really good ones. A Prophecy for 1973, written in 1873. That's like the one that we've done the most.
In 1973.
What does that one describe? What does it do?
Children, they will hatch them by steam. No need to stump up and down on an old wooden leg. The doctors will replace like your legs with new limbs. Like, it's eerily accurate.
Yeah,
and then
so it's like the Jetsons.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, there's going to be flying steam trains.
Yeah, but it's really a really fun thing to sing. And then I had to teach it to Italian singers in Venice, which was hard work, especially with one that's like so wordy.
And there's lots of dialect words and stuff in some of them.
Yeah, we had to really narrow them down, and then it eventually came down to me just teaching them parrot style, so just screaming it at them and then making them repeat it and then screaming it at them again.
Were they classical singers?
The two classical singers came, like two operatically trained women, and I had to send them home because I don't need a singer, I need someone with heart that can convey the message, because anyone can sing these, that's the point.
Right.
But I didn't warm up properly, and they were doing these crazy warm-ups, and I just thought, we're on 2 different pages here, you're going to have to go, because I'm trying to make a minor out of you here, and you're a beautiful operatic lady.
Oh dear. I mean, as far as the political content in the material is concerned, how do you feel that it relates to modern times, or is it just a question of listening to a song about what things were like in the old days?
No. It's so relevant to today, it's crazy. The Industrial Revolution, it's happening now in Bangladesh. People in China are losing their jobs to automation, just like steam power. It's all the same. And then child workers and things like that, this stuff never stopped. Just people have forgotten about it or turned a blind eye to it.
We are able in this country, I think, to feel very, very removed from the slums which are still there. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, because when I sang at the Biennale, the theme was Das Kapital, Marx, and then you've got loads of art dealers walking around, like taking pictures next to these grand artworks, and I'm singing about a 14-year-old girl working in the mines, crying on stage, and people are like, oh wow, yeah, that's great.
You come from round here. Where do you actually come from?
Middleton.
Okay, how far away is that?
20 minutes on the bus.
There you go. As far as Manchester's concerned, what are your favourites?
I like the Bury New Loom. As I walked between Bolton and Bury, it wasn't a moonshiny night. I met with your buxom young weaver, whose company gave me delight. So that sounds, like they've just met each other on the road.
Lovely.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And then it goes down to, my shuttle ran well in her lathe, my main treadle worked well up and down, my level stood close to her breast beam the time I was shriving her loom. It's hilarious and filthy, and it's really, really great.
Yeah.
But when her forloom post she led, go it flew out of order again.
That is a work of art, I would argue.
A work of very mucky art.
It's just beautifully done, isn't it? It's a beautifully constructed song.
I said, my dear lassie, I'm sorry, in Bolton I must be new.
Who knows what the reaction would have been like at the time, whether people would have just been laughing a lot or joining in or doing the motions.
We'll square up your jerry hand loom.
When Jen sang that song in Venice, people laughed who weren't even native English speakers, as it were. People got it. You understand.
Because of her delivery, or because of... How much did she explain beforehand?
She explained next to nothing. I think she said this is an erotic masterpiece. I told her to say that, because that's what it's been described as, and I just thought, there's actually nothing rude in it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's just your dirty mind making it rude. You know,
Yes,
that's
it's
the
completely
thing.
pre-Watershed, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
absolutely. It's as filthy as you want it to be, and that's brilliant.
Andrew, as literary examples, how do they compare against the oral tradition?
I think a lot of poets, quite mainstream poets, have been interested in ballads like these. Writers like Wordsworth, Coleridge, Tennyson, ballads like these have been really important to what we think of as literary writers, and they've made that part of their work, not all of their work. In the 30s, say, you've got a writer like Auden, who's looking back to the ballad tradition. He's thinking about how can he tell a story which is often a Marxist story or a Freudian story, but he's using the forms and the style and the simplicity of ballad writing. And I think he's attracted by what we have here, which is quite a tight way of telling a story. Ballads have an almost universal appeal. You've got a set of stories which are told through dialogue and action. There's not much description of setting or character. And also they deal in quite powerful emotions. They're often simple emotions. The content of ballads is often tragic and sometimes comic. I think in terms of cultural value, they're really important, and in many ways they've been underground. But I think people should study these because quite a lot of mainstream poetry comes out of this tradition.
One of the aims of this programme for me was to find a song out of the Manchester Ballad collections and sing it to you. And I've done that. It's called The Old Sexton, or I Gather Them In. It sets the scene really brilliantly, dramatically. You've got this old fellow with his white beard, and he's just finished digging a grave, and he's watching the funeral cortege come past, and the scene is set really, really well for you. And he's saying, the dead, they're all mine, I gather them in. And that really, really speaks to me. And I've done what you're supposed to do. I've taken a tune that I know really well, that I think people will know really well, and I've put it to the song, and here it is. High to a grave that was newly made, leaned a sexton on an earth-worn spade. His work was done, and he paused to wait the funeral train through the open gate. A relic of bygone days was he, and looks as white as the foamy sea. And these words came from his lips so thin, I gather them in, I gather them in, I gather them in.
That was Eliza Carthy singing an excerpt from I Gather Them In, one of the ballads she discovered in Chetham's Library in Manchester. The programme was produced in Salford by Nick Holmes. Now here's something to look forward to tomorrow afternoon.
Literary debate on BBC Radio 4.
Well, I have to confess, when I first saw the book, both the size of it, over 700 pages, and the fact that it was about football, my heart did sink.
With choices from the MP Caroline Lucas and the columnist Rod Liddle.
OK, it's a memoir. You have an excuse for a bit of narcissism and introspection, I suppose. But also shoehorned into it was the most pretentious allusions to Greek mythology.
The new series of A Good Read.